At the edge of a forgotten coastline, where the cliffs crumble into the sea and the fog hangs so thick it feels like a memory, there stands an old lighthouse. No keeper, no ships passing, no path left unbroken to reach it. Yet every night, without fail, the lantern at the top of the tower glows softly through the mist. Not bright enough to guide anyone, just enough to remind the darkness that something inside refuses to die. No one has tended this lighthouse in over 40 years. The doors have rusted shut. The stairs are broken by damp and time. The lantern basin has long run dry, and yet the light remains. Steady, warm, patient, almost alive. When the traveler arrived in the abandoned village below, the air tasted of salt and nostalgia. Shuttered houses leaned into the wind. Windows stared at him like tired eyes. The sea whispered secrets to the stones, and every gust of wind carried a sound that might have been a memory. He followed the faint golden glow upward, to the lighthouse at the cliff's edge. The closer he got, the more the air trembled, as if the lantern recognized him. Inside the lighthouse, dust floated in the beam of the lantern like tiny wandering souls. Pages of an open journal turned on their own, though the air was still. A cup of tea sat on a table, cold, untouched, yet somehow not abandoned. And at the center of it all hung the impossible lantern. Its wick burned down to nothing, its oil tank empty, covered in dust, yet glowing with a golden pulse as steady as a heartbeat. The traveler stepped closer even though he didn't remember why he came. Something in the room felt familiar, like a dream half remembered just before waking. The lantern flickered, casting patterns of light across the walls. Those patterns took shape, not faces, not bodies, but objects. A pair of gloves on a windowsill, a compass pointing nowhere, a seashell cracked down the middle, a feather tucked between book pages, a rope coiled neatly beside an empty chair. Each object glowed faintly as the lantern pulsed, as if trying to tell a story without using a single human form. The traveler felt a tremor in his chest. He didn't recognize the lighthouse, but the lighthouse recognized him. The lantern brightened, and suddenly, the room shifted. He saw a wooden table with a cup of tea still warm, a journal open to a blank page, a lantern newly polished waiting to be lit. Not a memory of the lighthouse, a memory of someone inside it waiting for a promise to be kept. The traveler's breath grew unsteady. He reached for the journal. The pages fluttered violently, as if resisting being touched, as if protecting the story inside. When they finally stilled, the traveler saw faint indentations in the paper, like words written with pressure but erased by time. "I'll come back before the storms return. I promise. Don't let the light go out." The lantern flared at these words, as though the promise still lived inside its flame. The traveler blinked. His hands trembled. He could not remember writing those words, and yet every part of him recognized them as something carved from his own soul. The lighthouse groaned in the wind. The lantern's glow softened into something aching, almost pleading. The traveler stepped closer and touched the lantern's cracked glass. And then the world around him shifted again. The light became water. The dust became stars. The walls dissolved into the sea. He found himself standing in a memory made only of objects. An empty chair facing the ocean. A rope tied to a railing. A lantern glowing in a storm. A pair of gloves left waiting on the table. A journal closed with a feather as a bookmark. No faces. No voices. But the ache of someone waiting for someone who never returned. The lantern brightened, showing him the memory he had buried. Two hands, not shown fully, only their outlines, passing the lantern from one to the other. A silent promise, a vow to return before the storms came back. But he hadn't returned. The storm took the other person before he could. And the lantern refused to forget, refused to go dark, refused to let the promise die. Because the lantern wasn't waiting for someone to come back. It was waiting for him to remember. As he finally understood, the lantern's flame flickered for the first time in decades. Softly, gently, gratefully. Its light dimmed like a sigh released after years of holding on. The traveler placed his hand over the lantern, not to extinguish it, but to acknowledge the truth it had burned so long to show him. For the first time in 40 years, the lantern grew quiet. The glow faded like a memory finding peace. The lighthouse softened into darkness. The sea outside exhaled, and the traveler felt something he hadn't felt since the day he made that forgotten promise: forgiveness. As he left the lighthouse, the fog parted like a curtain. The cliffs glowed faintly in moonlight. The village below seemed to breathe again. And high above, in the lantern room of the old lighthouse, a single spark glimmered briefly, not a flame, but a memory letting go. Some lights burned to guide us, some burned to warn us. But the rarest lights, the ones that refuse to die, burn to remind us of the promises we leave behind.